Hello YouTube, this is Thomas Judge back once again with another installment of my ongoing series of my retro gaming emulation journey, what I learned to do, how I learned to do it. As always, I'll point out this isn't a technical guide, although again this video is going to be kind of technical. This is more of a chronicle and a record of my journey, the steps I took, the missteps I made, and how I did it. So I'm going to cover all the hard to understand weird stuff that wasn't really documented elsewhere within the retro emulation community that I'm aware of. And as always, this is very much a guide of how to fuck around and find out and how to do it. As usual, I'm not going to be providing links to any ROMs at all for any of my videos. Please don't comment, please don't ask about it for obvious reasons. What this video is going to be is essentially going to be about gifts. Gifts that I made for other people. Gifts that I made for my girlfriend, gifts that I made for some of my friends, and essentially a bunch of random hacks that I put together using the skills that I'd learned to this point um, during my retro emulation learning. Now, I will point out this video is going to be a bit odd, a bit of a Frankenstein mess, because essentially I'm going to stitch together a bunch of random videos that I recorded at the time. One of them I think was almost 2 years ago now, a year and a half ago, um, covering different Retroids that I'd hacked, Nintendo DSs that I'd hacked, and even a Wii U that I'd hacked. And I'm just going to throw those videos together, try and tighten them up with some editing, and then I might add some connective tissue and some blurbs just to kind of put it together and make it all make a bit of sense. But long story short, this is a random series of disconnected vignettes of stuff I hacked and stuff I learned hacking it. And what I'm talking about today is going to be a Nintendo DS, a fair bit about Retroid Pockets and Retroid Pocket 3 Plus in particular, as well as a Retroid Pocket 2, and also stuff about hacking a Wii U. Well, with no further ado, let's get into it. Let's talk about hacking Nintendo DS. Now, I don't have any video footage of this because I didn't film it at the time that I did it. But long story short, my girlfriend had a Nintendo DS with an R4 card. If you don't know what an R4 card is, it's essentially a flash card that slots directly into your Nintendo DS, like a fake cartridge. If you've been watching the series so far, this is a lot like the MiG Switch for the Nintendo Switch, but this was much, much earlier. This has been around for about 15, 20 years. Anyway, when I started going out with this, she already had a Nintendo DS and it already had an R4 card on it. And that R4 card had a 1 gig memory card, like an SD card. Was it 1 gig? I think so. Anyway, she wanted some new games on it, mainly because she started going out with me, and so she was interested in a few new games, specifically Plants vs. Zombies and the Prince of Persia game, The Fallen King, on Nintendo DS. Now, I didn't know how to do that, so I kind of wasn't able to help. And then when I started getting into retro emulation, I was like, okay, I'm going to learn about R4 cards, and I'm going to learn how to add stuff to hers. So it's really, really straightforward. You literally have an SD card inside this fake cartridge. You pop out the fake cartridge, you slide the SD card out, you stick it in your computer, and it'll show you all the various files on it. Now, the R4 card she had a version of software on it which was 1.14 of the R4 software. However, the 1.14 software didn't run several games because what happened, whoever came up with the R4 card released various versions of this software, and each few months they released a new version, and that new version was ready for the new games that had been released in the intervening period. What that meant is when I tried to run Plants vs. Zombies or even Prince of Persia The Fallen King, I either ran into a white screen at boot up or it wasn't able to save file. So what I did is I ran around on the internet, and again, the Internet Archive was great for this. And I found the most recent version of the R4 software, which was 1.16. So I downloaded that and I installed that. No joy, it didn't work. Lots more Googling, lots more looking around the internet. I wanted to find something that could run these recent games like Plants vs. Zombies. And therefore, I came across a bit of R4 card software, which was a new kind of R4 system called Wood. Yes, it was called Wood. And I typed it in and I found it, and it was called Wood 1.63. That was the most recent version. I downloaded that and I put that onto the R4 card, and it's as simple as just literally clicking and dragging and copying it over. That fixed everything. Incredibly easy to do. That basically allowed me to play any games that I wanted on her DS. what I subsequently did is I then followed the example from the channel Wolf Den, which I previously recommended, and I actually, instead of even using wood, I used Twilight. And here's a shot of the page from Twilight, which is the place you can download the software from. It's a really small software file. You put it on the R4 card, and it's awesome. It's the most recent, most like up-to-date way of flashing the card so that it can run any ROMs you put on there. It's really well structured, really simple to organize, and you essentially just put the file on the card and then you stick your ROMs on and it works. It just literally works. That said, there are a couple of caveats I just want to point out. Firstly, the only tricky part is identifying the exact card that you've bought. Now, I bought mine off eBay and it's just called an R4 card, but there's like 15 different types of R4 card. There's like the R4, the R4 Gold, the R4 Pro, the R4 Pro Max Gold, etc. And you need to find or know the exact one you've bought so that you can put the exact right boot file into the auto boot folder in the right menu on Twilight. I'm afraid I haven't got any screenshots of any of this, but the Wolf Den guide does cover it in a lot of detail. I'd highly recommend using it. But even with that, it's going to be tricky because wherever you bought your card from, you need to know that exact detail for that individual card. So there might be some trial and error. Don't get disheartened. Just trial and error through all the various versions until you find the permutation that works for you. On that note, when you're putting stuff onto an R4 card, at least when you're using Twilight or Wood, you can't leave your ROMs zipped up. Your DS ROMs need to be unzipped. All your ROMs that you put on there need to be unzipped, which is unusual because for all the previous software variation we've talked about, leaving them zipped up has been fine, but not for hacking a DS. A couple of extra points on the DS when you hack it and you use an R4 card, especially when you use Twilight. Twilight actually allows you to do a lot of systems other than DS. The default software that comes with an R4 card like the 1.14 or version 1.16 or even Wood 1.63, they all just focus on DS. But if you install Twilight, you can then play other games on there, like Master System and NES and all that sort of stuff. Again, the ROMs need to be unzipped. And what I found is some of them didn't work even though they should have. I couldn't get my SNES ROMs to work. I don't know why. And my Genesis ROMs only worked when I changed all the ROMs to have .gen at the end instead of .md. It was just really weird. You need to manually change it. That is laborious if you've got several hundred Mega Drive ROMs. And on my personal ROM library, on my personal hard drive, I've saved the Mega Drive folder that's been unzipped and renamed because I never want to have to go through that tortuous effort again. It took about an hour the first time round. That said, that Nintendo DS hack worked really well, and I'm really happy to have been able to give it to my girlfriend. She really enjoyed it. And it's one of the easiest, nicest, smoothest hacks that you can do, really. The only fiddly bit was identifying the exact auto boot file to go into the exact right folder for the exact card that I bought. So quick recap, you can buy an R4 card off something like eBay. You can upgrade software up to whatever you want. If you just want to use Nintendo DS games, then Wood 1.63 is recommended. Follow the Wolf Den guide. Use the DS Homebrew wiki. The only tricky part you'll have is putting the exact right file in the exact right boot up folder, and it will just work. If you want to push it slightly further, then install Twilight instead of something like Wood, and Twilight will let you do lots of emulation for lots of other systems, Master System, Game Gear, NES, all very low powered systems, looking like 16-bit at best. But yeah, you can do all that on there. You will need to unzip your ROMs, and I personally couldn't get SNES rather, or Genesis, Super Nintendo or Mega Drive to work, but maybe you will. Okay, that's the end of my Nintendo DS journey. But next, let's have a look at what I decided to get her next. All right, hello YouTube. This is part of my emulation journey. I'm not sure what video this is going to be in. I'm not sure if I'm going to use this footage. But now that I'm trying to record a process that I never planned documenting, let's just see how it goes. Today I have this. Just turned up in the post. It is a Retroid Pocket 2 Plus. Now I'm recording this in summer 2023. So at this point, I have learned how to emulate all sorts of bits and pieces. I've done it on a Super Console X. I've done it on my own Android box and set up quite a decent high-powered one for retro gaming. I've done it on a Retroid Pocket 3 Plus, including PS2 games and Wii games. And I've done it on a PS Vita. So the next thing that I'm doing chronologically in the real world, God knows what you're seeing, is going to be doing it on a Logitech. So why am I doing a Retroid Pocket 2? Well, firstly, let's have a look at the box. This turned up in the post. I bought it from eBay for 50 quid. Given the Retroid Pocket 3 Plus is out and the Retroid Pocket Flip is out, the 2 Plus is clearly something which is much less desirable. In fact, Retroid don't even sell it on their website. So to that end, I went on eBay and I picked up the case, which is cool. I like it. It's very much like my Retroid 3 case, but obviously smaller, a bit squatter. So that's the case there, mint condition. Got that off eBay for a tenner. And then I get this off eBay for 50 quid. So let's have a look at what's in this. It's meant to be new and in box. Oh my god, I'm doing an unboxing video. This is my first ever unboxing video. So, what am I doing? Empty box. Here's the instruction. That's not very new, is it? There's the instructions. Ooh, look at that. Oh, that is untouched. That is untouched. That is nice. Premium. Premium. Okay. So, what am I going to do with this? What is this? Ooh, a screen protector. Nice. I don't know if I'll use that. I've never actually bothered with them before. And then we have a charging cable. Quick random story. Charging cables for these, I tend to, for my Retro Pocket 3 at least, have its own charging cable all the time. Just because I don't trust it with my normal charger. When I used it with my Nintendo Switch charger, it basically didn't work. And then secondly, it meant that my Switch charger didn't work for the next day. It didn't work in any of my tablets or my Switch or anything else. And then it started working again. So I thought, okay, maybe the issue with the charger. I put in my Retro 3 again, and again it broke the charger for a couple of days. So now I only charge my Retro 3 on its own cable, and I will do that for this as well. And that's what I will also have when I give this away. So that's why I bought this. This is a gift. This is going to be a gift for my partner, who is not into video games. However, she is really, really into games like Tetris and Puyo Puyo and Mean Bean Machine and all those sorts of games like columns, basically. To the extent that she keeps on borrowing my Retroid Pocket 3. Let me check a bit of trigger action here. Okay, that's cool. She keeps on borrowing my Retro Pocket 3, which is getting to be slightly annoying. So as a result, I thought I'd buy a Retro Pocket 2, and I'm going to stack this with every single variation of a Tetris type game that exists, basically. What do we have here? Memory cards, charging slot, cool. So, yeah, what I'll do is I'm going to talk through what I'm doing here, how I'm setting it up. I'm not going to do this all on camera, but yeah, I'm buying this and I'm going to hack it and set it up as an emulation center specifically for Tetris type games. I've already built up the ROM set. It's about 6.5 gig of ROMs, which is loads, like 180 different games that are variants of Tetris in one way or another. And yeah, what I'm going to do is I'm going to set it up and I am going to test it and use it and show it here on screen once it's all done. And yeah, and then I'm going to gift it. Okay, let's power this up. Let's power this up on screen. Okay, it hasn't powered up. That is not a strong start. That is definitely not a strong start. Okay, I'm going to go away and charge this, and then I will come back to you later.
Wow, it was strange watching that, realizing that I filmed that almost 2 years ago. Spoiler warning, I'm not going to now show what that's like once I set it up, because I did set it up and I did give it to my partner and she did use it, and I've now subsequently upgraded her with a better Retroid, which I will cover in the very last video in this series. So yeah, I haven't got any footage for it, but it's nothing massively exciting. Just as a quick update as to what happened with that 2S, or sorry, the Retroid Pocket 2 Plus. Setup was easy. All I had to do was charge it first, which I did. I installed 163 games in total, although later on I did ramp that up and added another couple of hundred games of different types of puzzle games as well. I found a lot of really serious, crippling, and very annoying BIOS issues. And again, I had to learn more and more about BIOS and how to set it up. But The next video in this series, so tomorrow or whenever, is going to be a real deep dive into BIOS, so we'll cover that then. Once I'd resolved all the BIOS issues, I set up RetroArch correctly, not just the Retro Pocket Launcher, but RetroArch as well. Um, the Retro Pocket 2 Plus, the one that I just shown you that I got off eBay, came with 32 gig of internal memory. And as it turned out, that was all I needed by a massive margin. The ROM set that I ended up with as my what I call my puzzle ROM set was something like 9.8 gig or something like that. So I didn't even bother putting in an SD card. I'd bought one, but I ended up using it for something else. Final point on this, with the Retro Pocket 2 Plus, it looked like GameCube and WiiWare games worked, but they always crashed about 10 minutes in. So there were a few games on there like Pio Pio on the GameCube and stuff like that, that my girlfriend did try and she did play, but they kept on crashing like 10, 20 minutes in. So that was pretty frustrating. She got a bit annoyed by it, understandably. So I uninstalled Dolphin for handheld. It was available and you can install it on this, but the hardware just isn't powerful enough on the Retro Pocket 2 Plus to run it. Okay, well, with that Retroid out of the way, there's a different Retroid I then started configuring. Let's have a look at it now.
And hello YouTube, this is Thomas Judge, back once again with a video in which I'm quite annoyed, to be honest. Let's kick it off. This is my Retroid Pocket. You can tell because it says Retroid Pocket on the case. And here it is. This is the one that I have. This is the case that comes with the wire, bits and pieces. Very happy with this, loving it. Been enjoying it loads, been messing around with it loads. Spent a lot of time going through just tuning, configuring, making sure it all works brilliantly. And so here's all the various consoles, here's all the various things. I have spent literally dozens of hours going through, fine-tuning every single part of it. If you look at something like this, Sega Master System, every single game has got hand-picked art. All the names have been tidied up so they don't have the nations and the various bits and pieces, and every single game has been tested. Been enjoying it. It sort of suits that slightly obsessive compulsive aspect of my personality. I'm currently working on Sega Genesis and Super Nintendo in tandem. Great fun. However, whilst I tested at least one for all the consoles at some point before I started this in-depth kind of review of every single console, one of them doesn't work. Sega CD. Let's go into Sega CD. Let's see, I'm using the Genesis Plus GX emulator, as you can see here. And if I jump back out, let's have a look at, let's say Earthworm Jim on Sega CD. Well, it's crashed, hasn't it? I mean, it's not meant to do that. Let's try to boot out into RetroArch. I've got that set with hotkeys. No good. So I've got to go back by double hitting the home button to manually, forcibly boot myself out of Sega CD. Sega CD does not work. How annoying. And you'll see here, we'll just do this. There you are, RetroArch is not responding. Some kind of problem, close the app. Clearly some kind of issue there. Okay, fair enough, it's not working. So what should I do? Well, fortunately, and I may have already done a video mentioning this, I don't know. A friend of mine asked me to make him a Retroid handheld for his daughter. Here we have it. This is the one that he bought, same case, different wire. He's gone for this colour scheme, which I massively dislike, but who cares about my opinion. I'm going to set it up for him. I have put a huge amount less effort into this because, frankly, this one isn't for me. So let's just dive straight into it. Retroid Launcher, let's dive into Emulation. This is what I've set up. I haven't put everything on here for him. I haven't bothered with games that are Japanese, so it's all English language only. I haven't bothered with a couple of consoles like PC Engine, but they all basically work. I haven't spent any time making an effort going through this. So if we look at something like Super Nintendo, I mean, this artwork's a little bit of a mixed bag, and there are gaps, and you can see all the titles have nation names after them as well. So, you know what? Fuck it. It's his. He can spend his time tuning it. I just got it working, thrown it all in here. I haven't even bothered optimizing a lot of the emulators. Everything works, but I haven't bothered optimizing it. Obviously, you know, I've set this up exactly the way I set it up for myself, and therefore set up his Sega CD. So this is the beauty of it. I've got his Retroid Pocket with the Sega CD issue that I have, set it all up exactly the same way I did. So what I'm going to do now is, because this isn't going to work here, I'm going to now fuck around with it. I'll mess around with the settings, I'll download random stuff off websites that, frankly, I wouldn't get my Retroid to go onto. I'll try installing APKs, other emulators. I'll even I'll even try to go into RetroArch and compare my different BIOS files. I've got loads of Sega CD BIOS files. I thought I had ones that work, but obviously, they don't work. So install this for him. Let's try Earthworm Jim again. Motherfucker. It works fine. He's got a Sega CD. It's set up using the BIOS that I've used for my Retroid, the ROMs that I've used for my Retroid. I've set it up in the exact same way, following the exact same Retro Game Core guide, and his fucking works. Just to clarify, he's also using Genesis Plus GX on the RetroArch. Literally set up exactly like mine with all the same stuff, and his works. So I can't mess around. I can't find out what's going on here. I can't try to use this as a way of triaging mine and fixing it. I'll be honest, I'm just annoyed as shit. I'm just annoyed as shit. This is not how it's meant to be. I offered to do this for him so I could troubleshoot my problems without doing anything with this that I'm not comfortable with. But instead, I set his up exactly the way I set mine up. Same BIOS, same ROMs, same emulators, same hardware. About a month later, and his fucking works on Sega CD, and mine doesn't. And I don't know what the problem is. His works on all the various emulators I can play Sega CD consoles, mine works on none of them. What am I meant to do with this? Ladies, gentlemen, others, this is exactly the kind of thing that annoys the shit out of me.
So I forgot how angry I was filming that video way back then. Although watching it now, I'm still kind of annoyed. Um, just to skip right to the ending, I was never able to fix Sega CD in my personal Retroid. My friend got his Retroid, his daughter used it, Sega CD was fine. I never fixed it on my own. Now, in an early video in this series, I kind of highlighted and showcased my own Retroid Pocket 3 Plus, and I did show in that video that because Sega CD didn't work, I actually side-loaded another emulator onto it called Classic Boy, which did work, and that's what I use for my Sega CD there. It's fine, it works, the gameplay is all fine. It's just slightly less slick because it's not all part of the same front end. Now, I do show that in an early video, and that's essentially how I would quote unquote have solved this problem. I haven't solved it, I just worked around it, and I just used a different emulator, Classic Boy, and this remains an annoying part of my life. Thankfully, I moved on to other builds like Logitech and Steam Decks, which we'll talk about in the next few videos. But yeah, I never solved this problem. If anyone does know or has experienced a similar thing and knows how to fix it, let me know in the comments down below. But for now, let's dive back into the past again to another video about the same Retroid that I was building for the same friend.
And hello YouTube. So this is another video which I think is going to be a segment of a larger video, but I'm filming this in a very unplanned ad hoc way, probably months before I release it. So let's see how this ends up looking. By my guess, this is going to be a video talking about emulation stuff I built for friends. So if that's the case, I wanted to show this. Yes, it's a Retroid. Yes, it's a Retroid 3. And no, it's not my Retroid 3. In fact, it's a Retroid 3 Plus. This belongs to a friend of mine who recently kind of found out about emulation, but didn't want to bother learning it themselves, which is totally fair. I completely understand that. Especially given that he's friends with me and he knew that I knew what I was doing. So, what I did is I told him about the different consoles that were available, different handhelds, and he went out and he purchased this. Good for him. And what he wanted me to do was to set it up for him, which I've done. But yet there are a couple of unique things here that I think are probably worth highlighting. He wants this for his daughter, in theory, at least. But to be honest, he wants all the games for himself as well, so he's going to be playing it as well. So as a result, his daughter's like 7 or 8 years old, so he didn't want to have adult games or games with an age rating, things like Mortal Kombat and so on, available for her to play. But at the same time, the Retroid, as far as I'm aware, doesn't allow you to set up different profiles and things. So I basically messed around with different ways I could do this and how I could set this up. And I'm going to talk you through what I set up as the bespoke build for my friend. Let's just start off. Let's just jump into the front screen. I actually picked this wallpaper because, his daughter's a child, and this is like a child's wallpaper. So there we are. We go straight into it. So let's just start off. Let's have a look at what I did with the main screen. Usual sort of folder structure that one would expect. And then we have the Retroid launcher here. And what I did is I've loaded it up with all the various ROMs and bits and pieces. I am not going to spend a lot of time configuring this for him, just because I have spent literally months configuring my Retroid Pocket to perfection. My Retroid Pocket has perfectly scrolled images, titles, all these sorts of things. This definitely does not. So for example, let's look at Game Boy Advance. We've got all these. And to be honest, what I will do at some point while I'm watching Netflix or just kind of like making my dinner or something, is I will continue going through and letting it auto-populate. Because to be honest, it's quite therapeutic. I don't know why. I don't know, maybe it just suits my OCD, but I find it quite therapeutic. But that said, this is as far as I'm going to go in terms of optimizing the UI for him. And the reason for that is that the amount of detail and nuance that I put into it for my own collection, which hopefully I've either shown in a previous video or I'll be showing in a future video, it's very, very different to just this. As we said before, this is kind of the default approach that happens when you scrape box art and so on using using the Retroid launcher, which looks okay. But firstly, it doesn't quite look right. I mean, you can see here, this is actual box art, and then this doesn't have the Game Boy Advance banner. This one here, Final Fantasy VI, does have the Game Boy Advance banner, but this one doesn't. And interestingly, what you can do is if you go into View, you can see why. So as you can see here, we've got actual box art, and here we don't. We have kind of promo art and things like that. Obviously, it's up to the owner if you want to have promo art, if you prefer to have box art like this. But for me personally, I try to have nothing but box art. I try to have very clean, very clear box art. Also, in terms of the names, I mean, here's got the region, USA and Australia. I don't have that. So what I do is I tend to go, well, you know what, I'll show you. Here's Final Fantasy for Advance, right? I'll go into it. And I know I've probably done other videos, or I will do other videos about this because I'm slightly obsessed with getting this right. But do you know what? Being obsessive is kind of par for the course if you're into emulation. So I tightened that name up by reducing the thread and removing the regions. I'm not having it as the real name. I click OK. There we are. And then if I go into box cover, let's look at Google Images. Yeah, fine. It's the first time I've done it on this particular handheld. And let's see if we can find it. No, what is this? No, thank you. Other add privacy features, got it, yep, fine. So here we have Final Fantasy 4 Advanced. So which box art will I pick? I'll pick that one because it hasn't got the little blue thing in the corner, even though it does have the 7 plus bit on it. Just hold down on it, download image. Yep, download. Never done this before on this Retroid, so I've forgotten all the various screens you're meant to go through. And then boom, that particular screen is done. Now, I am not going to be doing this with all the games I put on here. Mainly because he's not going to care. And secondly, I'm doing this for me. I'm doing this for my Retroid. And it is taking absolutely forever. It's fun. It's actually very therapeutic. No, let's get into focus. It's very fun. It's very therapeutic. But the truth is, I just don't have the time to put in months of effort tweaking and optimizing someone else's. What I will do is I will put in the effort to just scroll through and just watch it auto-populate what it can. And here for Game Boy Advance, it auto-populates most of them pretty well. There's the occasional gap here and there. Like we can see, there's 2 gaps here. But, you know, I'll do that, and to be honest, I'm going to do that with all the consoles, and it'll be quite therapeutic and quite nice, and just like a bit of a slightly obsessive, compulsive kind of completionist thing. What I wanted to show you, however, is what I've done in order to make this child-friendly. So these are the various systems that I've installed for my friend. Let's go down to, an easy one would be Wii. Let's look at Wii. So in Wii, I've thrown in all the Wii games that I have and all the WiiWare that I have. And all this is pretty much child-friendly. So the interesting one I think to keep in mind is of all the Wii games, whilst they're all child-friendly, Mad World definitely is not. Mad World is one of my favourite games, but it's definitely not child-friendly. So, if my friend wants to play it, he can play it, but then how is he going to stop his daughter from playing it? Well, this is what I set up. So here you can see there's Mad World. So how do I get rid of Mad World? Easy. You go to ROMs, and what I'll do, I'll just unselect this and I'll delete the link to the adult games. Delete. And it's gone. That simple. So you can hand this to your daughter, she can play all these games absolutely fine. And then when he picks it up and he wants to play it, you literally ROMs, add, internal storage. I've made a folder called adult games, scroll down, and these are the ones where I have split out different ROMs to suit things like Mortal Kombat, Call of Duty, that sort of thing. Select Wii, hang on, fat fingers, still fat fingers. Select Wii, hang on, that's N64, hang on. Select Wii properly, press select, scan, and hey presto, it has re-added Mad World. That simple. I've done the same with a variety of other consoles, so GameCube, for example, Wii, PSP, and PlayStation 2. Yeah, and that's how you split this into a profile which it can be used for a child, and then also how you can hide the various adult-themed games. So for example, again, this is PS2. If I go in there, and you can see I've got the normal folder on the top, which is for his daughter, and then I've got all the normal adult games like Mortal Kombat and Call of Duty and so on here. And if he doesn't want to show those, literally delete that second link the way that I just showed you, and it removes those from the user interface here. And then to put them back in, find that second link again and then rescan it. That simple. So that, everyone, is how you set up a Retroid Pocket with one profile, but with a really easy filter to make it child safe and child friendly. Obviously, the factor here is making sure you put all the adult games into that adult folder and you have it on a separate scan path. So I've done the best I can, but frankly, I don't have kids, so it's up to my friend to really make sure it's exactly the way that he wants it. What I've done is to essentially placate his wife. I've made sure all the ones with famous names are in the adult games folder. So stuff like Call of Duty, stuff like Mortal Kombat, things like Assassin's Creed, things like that. And anything where his wife might see it and be like, right, that's unacceptable, and it starts to row. Don't want that to happen. So that's what I've done there. Another thing that I've done actually, he gave me a 512 gig memory card. Now, a 512 gig memory card, he wanted all my PlayStation 2 sort of ROMs you want me to install, Wii and all the various other things. I haven't done any of that because there's not enough room on it. So what I did is I just kind of made a rough guess myself as to what would be suitable. I removed all the Japanese games. I didn't install PC Engine or Wonder Color or anything like that. And as it is, I basically filled this SD card and the internal hard drive as much as I possibly could, but there's still quite a lot of gaps. There's several hundred ROMs that I have that on this Retroid Pocket, and yeah, generally I just kind of made a best guess as to sort of what someone who isn't as into video games as me might find interesting. So yeah, hopefully that was useful. Hopefully that was helpful. Yeah, that is how you set up a Retroid Pocket for a child, but make it so it's possible to have adult games separate and easy to access. And this is what I'll be doing over the next couple of days, just double checking and making sure each of the systems work. I'll try one system on each, one game on each of the systems. I'm not going to bother configuring the pictures or doing any tweaking like that, other than just loading on the defaults. And yeah, and I've set it up so it accesses all the adult ROMs for now, but if he wants to get rid of those, it is easy as pie. Cool. Thanks. And hello YouTube. Who knows if this is ever going to be used as part of a YouTube series, but why not? Let's give it a try. Let's have a look at my hacked WiiU. I'm going to hold it up so you've got some idea what it looks like. You start off by going into the Me Maker. This is all as per the Blaine Locklear video. So we'll start off with the Me Maker. We do have sound. There we are. Into the Homebrew apps. Click RetroArch. Load. And here we have it. Okay. So this is the normal RetroArch screen that we're familiar with. Apologies for the reflection, but I mean, we're just going to have to deal with that, to be honest. So there we have the various screens. This is the main bit where you can pick to quit RetroArch. And on the side, you can see all of the games that I've installed. So first things first, what hasn't worked? Sega CD hasn't worked. If we go into that, let's pick, I don't know, BC Racers, which I know is a ROM that definitely works. Let's run it. Wait for it, and failure. There you go. So that hasn't worked irrespective of what core I've tried to load it with, so that's no good whatsoever. Let's try Mega Drive. Let's see, what did I've tested this with Aladdin, but let's try it with something else. Earthworm Jim is always a good one. Let's try it with Earthworm Jim. Oh wait, we've got Chaos Engine. Good game. Good game. Alright, let's try Chaos Engine. Comes up. Run. It will ask for the core. We want Genesis plus GX. That's been set. So we now run. And boom. We are good. I've never actually played this game. Must be some way to get through it. For fuck's sake. I don't even know what I'm doing at this point. The point is, it works. Well, this is embarrassingly incoherent on my part. Aha! Right, I picked someone and I picked someone else. Okay. That's the beauty of having controls that aren't mapped. But as you can see, it's all working. So this is fun. I played a hell of a lot of this on my Mega Drive back in the day, and yeah, it's good. Boom, we've got it going on. To get out, press home. Takes you to the RetroArch menu. Close content. And boom, you're in the RetroArch menu. This has worked quite cleanly throughout. It's worked on all the different systems. I've scraped all the various thumbnails. 32X does work, even though Sega CD does not. And they've all worked really nicely. The one which is slightly annoying, well, for a start, arcade games have randomly split themselves into different folders, which is slightly irritating, even despite my best efforts for that not to happen. But the really annoying one is Game Boy Advance. If you look at this, what's happened is some of these have ended up uploading themselves more than once. I haven't quite got to the bottom of this. So if you look at, for example, Dragon Ball Z, we've got WiiU's Fury, which is here twice. One of them works, one of them doesn't. So let me give this a try. Let's try the first one. Run. Can't be found. That's annoying. So if I try it again, you'll see here it pops up saying file can't be found. Let's try the second one. Run. And it started straight away. I played this before, so it's already set itself to the correct core and so on and so forth. As you can see, it's quite a battered old WiiU screen. It's all scratched and dinged. Let's turn that sound down. It's all dinged up and so on. But yeah. So that works as well. There we have it, fully hacked. What worked, what didn't work? Well, obviously I've already discussed it, or I should have already discussed it in the video. Had loads of problems uploading the actual ROMs, had to do it in a very segmented way. Sega CD is basically a failure. And annoyingly, you can't set it, I haven't found a way to set it so that each system is affiliated to a particular core. Every single time you pick a game, so here for example, if I pick Batman Returns on Game Gear, every single time you pick a game, it will ask you for what core you want every single time. So it might be handy if you're giving this as a gift to provide someone with a cheat sheet of what core you're going to have, what core they need to pick every time they pick something on a particular system. All right, and yeah, then just quit and out of it. That's all I wanted to kind of show on this. I've got to say, oh, is it in focus? See if it focuses. There you are. I've got to say, I really enjoy using this. It's a really nice form factor. It's a really nice big screen. It's only good for absolute retro games. So we're talking sort of tier 1 retro games. But for that, it's really good. It's a really good toy. It's a really good mess around thing. A Wii U, unfortunately, they're quite hard to get hold of, and in working condition, they're like actually pretty tough to get. This is obviously scratched, it's dinged. This is what I think the kind of perfect condition is you want for this, because getting a brand new one will cost you the earth. So just get a second-hand one, get a dinged one that's been bouncing around and thrown around a few places. Maybe the disk drive doesn't even work. It doesn't matter. And then all you need to do is just set it up like this and then give it to a friend or a friend's child. In this case, I'm giving it to a mate of mine, and his son is 10 years old. And he's gonna bang the hell out of this. Just to get out of this, just so you know, press the home menu. It takes you to the actual Me Maker Studio, at which point, boom, you are done. So that's my successfully hacked Wii U. I'm not going to keep it. I've graduated well beyond this with Steam Decks and Retroids and Logitechs and so on. But this was a fun little side project. It took me about maybe an hour and a half. Well, it took me about maybe an hour and a half in terms of my time to fix it and troubleshoot it and do all the things. It should have taken about 15 minutes apart from the various issues I ran into, hence this video. And once you include in all that troubleshooting and fucking around, which I've done, about an hour and a half. If you follow this guide as well as the Blaine Locklear guides, it should only take you about 20 minutes. The time is spent in basically putting the ROMs onto the SD card, 20 gigs of ROMs on here, and then obviously for those to be scanned into the directories, which can take a couple of hours as well. But otherwise, boom, it is good to go out of the box. Not much messing around or tweaking with the settings need to be done unless you want to. Right, back to whatever the rest of this particular video of this particular emulation series is going to be.
So that was a slightly random and ad hoc video. Made that about a year or so ago, and I did successfully give the Wii U to a friend of mine as a New Year's present. He really enjoyed it. His kids have played it loads, and now he's trying to rebuild an old Sega Game Gear that he found somewhere. So God knows what he's going to do with that, but he clearly has the retro gaming bug. Um, what I thought I'd do is just do a slightly more calm and less frantic and slightly more coherent and chronological explanation of what I just showed you as the Wii U, and also talk through some of the problems that I encountered and how I solved them. Some of which we've actually already tackled and talked about in the last video or a couple of videos ago, when we talked about things like mutant ROMs. But first things first, let's just dive into it. How was it hacking the Wii U? It was actually quite good fun. It was kind of a two-stage process. To start with, the first thing to do is to install something called Tiramisu, which is a jailbreak specifically for the Wii U. What I did is I just Googled the Wii U Hacks Guide. This is the website, and the Wii U Hacks website is excellent. It's an entire dedicated website made by people who care about this sort of stuff. The web address comes up the minute you look for Wii U Hacks. But as well as using that, I also use the Blaine Locklear videos, which I mentioned several times in the footage you've just seen. He's got a couple of videos about hacking a Wii U and installing RetroArch in a Wii U and a bunch of things. And on his playlist, not only does he have those videos, he then has updated versions of those videos. So I'd recommend going onto his channel. Once you're on his channel, just look for Wii U videos and then look for the most recent ones, because each option he has to jailbreak or to hack or whatever, he has an updated and simpler version. In some cases, he's updated them several times, and the most recent ones are always the simplest, most user-friendly ways of doing it. Highly recommend it. Really, really useful channel. Very, very user-friendly, idiot-proof stuff. So I installed everything the way that he showed, and initially this worked flawlessly. I installed all the possible cores that I could for all the systems that I view as tier one, which is like Game Boy Color, Game Boy Advance, Game Gear, Master System, Genesis, Sega CD, Sega 32X, NES, SNES, MAME, and Final Burn. Um, However, as one of the things you do when you set up RetroArch, you're supposed to use it to update assets or database and stuff. Doesn't work, crashes every single time. And when I say crashes, like what I mean is specifically it shows an error screen saying it's crashed. I make that distinction as being distinct to freezing, which is simply when something you're doing on the device becomes unresponsive and it locks a particular screen for like several minutes or even an hour or so. That's freezing, whereas crashing is an actual bona fide, what they call a styled or graceful error message that comes up saying this has crashed, the following thing is wrong. So sometimes when I was trying to do online updater for RetroArch, in fact every single time, it crashed and actually gave me an error message. The way that I got around crashes and in fact freezes was by updating each core one by one. That updating the assets, by the way, took well over an hour, so everything is just very slow on the Wii U. And then after every single update that I did, I would quit RetroArch so it would autosave, and then I would go back in and install the next update and so on. If this doesn't make 100% sense to you, that's probably because you're not used to installing RetroArch on something. When you do, you'll remember or you'll realize that this is what you have to do. You have to install it and then do a bunch of manual updates and unzips and downloads and things like that. And this is the process I'm talking about. You have to do it in kind of a granular, incremental way rather than what perhaps you may have done in a Retroid Pocket, which is just press a button, do it all in one go. The next issue came around loading the actual games onto the SD card. Keeping in mind a Wii U can only understand or see an SD card that's 32 gig, and that's about it. That's the largest it can handle. Also, it can't handle micro SDs. It literally can only handle SD cards. We're talking retro gaming after all. Trying to load my entire games folder onto the SD card, even though it was only 20 gig, crashed it. Needed a hard reset. So what I had to do is I then had to load each system individually, folder by folder. So the Game Boy Color, Game Gear, Master System, 32X, and SNES, they all loaded fine. But the remaining ones didn't. So I'll talk you through some of the problems that I hit, and if you've watched my video that covers mutant ROMs, you will understand exactly what I mean. When I tried to import Game Boy Advance ROMs, just crashed, and just fucking died. When I tried to import NES ROMs, it only saw 5 ROMs. That was it. Importing Mega Drive ROMs, it basically crashed at Sequest DSV, the game, the ROM for that. Sega CD didn't recognize a single ROM, didn't see anything. MAME crashed. Final Boom, it basically locked at ROM 1440 for some reason. Yeah, that last bit is right. Despite only having 267 Final Burn ROMs in my folder, RetroArch was looking at thousands of files. In fact, it tried to see 5,914 files, which was crazy. This was actually the same for Game Boy Advance, where it was seeing over 1,700 files when it only had over 500 ROMs. For Genesis, it was seeing 900 files, but it only had 400 ROMs. And again, for MAME, it just kept on crashing all the time. I guess there were 400 MAME ROMs, but God knows what the Wii U RetroArch was seeing when it scanned it. So some of you may have already guessed what had happened, but I'll talk you through the solutions. For Sega CD, I discovered that the system could not see Sega CD CHD files. It could only see them in the non-converted original format, which was BinQ. So what I then did, I imported them in BinQ format. And what I decided to do is to keep a separate folder on my personal hard drive or library for my ROM library of Sega CD BinQ format ones, which are larger than CHD, which is why I don't normally use them. But clearly sometimes they have some utility. When it came to MAME, I got MAME to work by splitting the ROMs into 7 folders with about 70 ROMs each. And I called them MAME 1, MAME 2, MAME 3, and so on. And I scanned each of these folders individually. It took about half an hour each, and then I saved RetroArch each time afterwards. For the Mega Drive, I basically discovered that Sequest DSV was a mutant ROM. Speaking of mutant ROMs, I also discovered that for Game Boy Advance, there was a mutant ROM in it, which I actually showed a few videos ago, and that was the It's a Final Fantasy game that had a massive set of other ROMs in it, and then within that was another mutant ROM, which I think was something like Arthur and the Sea Monkeys or whatever it was. But yeah, that explains why Game Boy Advance caused so many problems. I did the same thing with Final Burn that I did with MAME, which is that I split everything into sort of subfolders. So I had 7 Final Burn folders, and that basically solved the problem. I think there's some mutant ROMs that may have snuck in there somewhere because some games turned up twice, like Armored Warriors, but what could I do? When it came to NES games, as I said, the system couldn't read any of the ROMs that I had, but I was using ROMs that I got from the original Super Console X Pro, which I would have talked about right at the start of the series. For some reason, the Wii U scan didn't detect any of those, but it did detect any fresh ROMs I got myself that didn't rely on the Super Console X original. So I don't know if that indicates there's something a bit sketchy or sketchier than we originally thought about Super Console ROMs, but hey, something to keep in mind. So those are the problems that I hit when it came to using the Wii U and the various ROMs for the various consoles. Again, if you're hacking a Wii U, these are all problems that no one else I know had. Couldn't find any advice or support on it online, and it took me a while to work them out myself bit by bit. Finally, the last thing that I will say is that scanning pictures works very much like the Blaine Locklear YouTube guide, but takes a lot longer. Personally, I found it most effective to scroll down the list slowly, which doesn't scrape anything. But when you get back to the bottom and you start scrolling back up, it suddenly starts filling in all the artwork super quickly. So I don't really know why that is the case, but that seemed to work when you're doing the scraping for the artwork for the games on the Wii U. Okay, hopefully all this has been helpful. It's been a hell of a long video. It's probably getting close to about an hour or so, but these are all the real world tips that I can give you about hacking all these devices, be that a Nintendo DS, be that a Retroid Pocket 3 Plus, or be that a Wii U. These are all the tips and tricks, all the things that I learned, all the weird things that no one else mentioned anywhere else. And chances are, if you're doing this the way I did it, which I don't think was that bizarre or avant-garde away, chances are you've hit some of these issues as well. So hopefully this has been helpful. In tomorrow's video, we're going to be diving in a lot of detail into BIOS, and I'm going to show you step by step every single BIOS file you need, including the ones that, again, a lot of YouTubers and a lot of guides aren't very transparent about. So I'll be doing all that in tomorrow's video. But until then, hope you enjoyed today. Hope it was useful. Thanks for sticking around and watching the whole thing if you did. And as always, comment, like, do not subscribe unless you are really into comic book content because this channel is going to go back to comic books relatively soon. But otherwise, thanks for watching and stay classy.